So over the past few days, speculation has speculated on speculative things. The topic in question was Microsoft acquisitions. Who are they going to buy next to put in their Xbox team? This particular rumor mill isn't spitting out anything too concrete. It's just a bunch of people saying something big happened and or is happening. Now, while I don't put too much credence in rumors of this type, and it could just be a bunch of baloney, it does give me the chance to discuss something that's been on my mind for a while. Who could Microsoft buy next? If you don't know somehow, Microsoft is a big company. They're worth more than almost everything. I mean, if they really wanted to, and there was no restrictions of monopolies and other frivolous nonsense, they could just buy the entire gaming industry, like all of it, and then go on and buy like every car manufacturer in Disney. Luckily, such restrictions do exist beyond simply having the cash. Monopoly law is fickle and rarely absolute, but it does make it so Microsoft can't just buy Nintendo and Sony at once and call it in a day. And it's also not as simple as just having enough money to buy said thing and then buying it, because the company acquired also needs to be willing to sell. But today, I just wanted to go over my thoughts on all of this, because I felt like talking about it. A few names come up very consistently in this conversation. The most prominent are Take-Two, Warner Interactive, Bungie, Platinum, and any number of Japanese publishers. A lot of studios have already commented on these rumors. Most of the time is to say, we're not selling and we have no intention of selling. With this, you can kind of write off Bungie and Platinum. One of the more wackier ones of this bunch is Take-Two, because, I mean, they'd get this. Take-Two seems to be valued at just over $20 billion. Frankly, there's no reason it couldn't happen. Microsoft could acquire GTA and make GTA 6 exclusive to the Xbox. They might get a bit of backlash, but it's just business, alright? I mean, we haven't even seen the full reaction yet that the internet will have when they realize Elder Scrolls 6 is an Xbox exclusive title. I'm kind of scared to think of what GTA 6 as an Xbox exclusive would do to that. Warner Interactive is less world-shattering, but definitely one of the more commonly discussed options. This would include Mortal Kombat and Injustice, really just a bunch of studios that make games for Warner Brothers properties. This seems weird, in my opinion. I know it gets brought up the most out of everything because there was rumors of this singular division being sold off to specifically Microsoft, but I have more concerns about that I'll get to later. What about the not discussed options, the meme options? What about Nintendo? Could Microsoft buy Mario? Well, Microsoft tried this a while ago, and Nintendo reportedly just laughed at them. But nowadays, things are different. Nintendo's no longer a family-owned business, and Iwata was still closely involved with that family. It's more realistic now, but also, for a price of even $100 billion, Nintendo's in a pretty fine financial position. There's very little reason to sell now, especially when they expect to have some future as a media conglomerate in the vein of a Disney. Some of you out there might think this could never happen. It'd be a monopoly, right? Well, probably not. Even combined, Xbox and Nintendo would only account for like 50% of the market. I think you could make an argument that if Microsoft and Google and Apple can control these market shares, this isn't too crazy. But yeah, no, I don't see this happening. It'd be funny though, right? It'd be pretty funny. What about PlayStation? What if Xbox buys PlayStation? Well, they would have to buy not just PlayStation, but all of Sony. And Sony makes a good chunk of its money from this singular division, so they wouldn't probably sell it off for any reason. In terms of monopolies, it gets a little bit iffier, because I mean, that's a lot. Especially if you argue that Nintendo is in a separate market. But if it only costs $150 billion or something like that, it still wouldn't even be close to the largest acquisitions in history. The next biggest acquisition to many people would be Valve, right? Microsoft buying Gabe Newell himself. Well, Valve isn't worth nearly as much as Nintendo or PlayStation. It's actually not worth that much at all. But it still seems really unlikely. The entire company is based around this loose, almost seemingly anti-corporate mentality. That independence is the biggest asset they have to themselves. Now with some of those options out of the way, what's the real choices then? Well, we have the big three, the EAs, Activision, and Ubisoft. EA could cost $40 billion or more. Microsoft would get, Battlefield and Skate and BioWare and Skate, but they already seem to have struck a major deal that would make this pointless. EA Access is included in Game Pass, so if the purpose is to buy a company to get more Game Pass subscriptions, that seems to already have been covered. I think rumors in the past of this acquisition might have been confused with whatever this deal was, because it was probably really expensive for Microsoft. Ubisoft is worth under $10 billion? That's actually pretty low. If Microsoft wanted this company, it wouldn't raise any antitrust concerns. I mean, frankly, they just aren't that big. But the IPs they have carry a lot of weight. And you got Assassin's Creed and Tom Clancy and Rayman and Far Cry and Rayman. But what about Activision? Potentially worth $60 billion bucks. It's getting up there. And remember, this would include Activision, Blizzard, and King. Normally, I'd say not a chance. And Microsoft buying Activision, no. But given all that's happening right now to the company, its value might not be that high anymore. I mean, there's a lot of legal problems there, from California to the SEC. Stuff I'll cover in like a year when Bobby is in prison. A potential sale, though, could be a saving grace for the company's PR. Combine this with the fact that it doesn't seem like they're really on the upswing, and it would allow the coke-fueled executives to get out with a quick payday. I could see this happening before the whole thing collapses. Why would they do this? Well, you'd get a lot of IPs. You'd get Crash and Spyro and Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero, just a bunch of big names that Activision wasted. Next up, everybody else. CD Projekt Red would probably sell for under $10 billion or so. Microsoft would get more Western RPGs that they probably don't need. They'd get GOG, so that's something. Epic Games, that's not going to happen. Tim Sweeney doesn't seem too comfortable with big tech conglomerates right now. Also, why would you buy Unreal Engine and Fortnite? They're just kind of platform agnostic options, not really Game Pass sellers. Devolver Digital's over there. That'd be like maybe $2 billion bucks. That'd be awful. Don't do that. Probably the largest acquisition that Microsoft could have in terms of pure IPs would be Embracer Group. This is a relatively new name on the scene, but they got a lot. You got THQ Nordic and Gearbox and 3D Realms and just all this stuff. If Microsoft wanted the most bang for buck, this group, at maybe $10 billion or so, would probably be the best deal. I expect this group to be worth a lot more in the near future, so I can't expect the executives to just be like, yep, let's sell right now. Earlier, I talked about Warner Interactive, and this led me to thinking about how impractical it would be to acquire a studio that mostly makes games based on IPs Microsoft does not own. But what if they did? In May 2021, AT&T merged Warner Media with Discovery to form this new company with the worst logo you've ever seen. Its value is like $40 billion or something like that. This is interesting because just a few years before, AT&T acquired Time Warner for a lot more. So that value's dropped a lot. But without AT&T attached, with Warner Brothers' value much lower, what if Microsoft just bought all of this? Yeah, that'd be weird, right? But Microsoft isn't just competing with Sony and Nintendo. Their biggest fear is that Google or Apple or Amazon drops out the biggest bucks you've ever seen and buys massive media conglomerates for themselves. I mean, what if Apple bought Disney? What if Google bought Disney and then they bought Activision and EA to make Disney exclusive property games for Stadia? What if the only way to watch a Disney movie was on a Chromecast? Okay, so without some of those crazier options, what is Microsoft really gonna do? You know, I think it's almost guaranteed it's gonna be some Japanese publisher. Phil Spencer has said many times in the past how he'd like to see this happen. There's been a lot of reports of this kind of stuff going on. However, Phil has also implied that any acquisition would come from somebody pretty close to Microsoft and Xbox already, rather than just randomly acquiring a massive studio. The big names thrown out most commonly are Square Enix, Capcom, Koei Tecmo, Bandai Namco, and Konami, and also Sega. None of these would break the bank like some of these other options, but also there's a few caveats that might make it impractical. Okay, so quick update while I was making this video. A couple pieces of news that are pertinent to this particular discussion have broken. Originally, my assessment was that it's gonna be Sega, but then Nintendo announced Sega games coming for the Nintendo Online service, and I thought, that can't happen. But then I saw Banjo-Kazooie in the list of 64 games, and I'm like, well, they had to have teamed up with Microsoft for that a little bit, so that's not out of the question. Also, I originally assumed that Square didn't have a chance of being acquired. I mean, the last time Microsoft has worked really closely with the company was a good few years ago, but then it was announced that Crystal Dynamics, which is a Square Enix studio, is partnering with The Initiative to work on Microsoft's Perfect Dark reboot. Head of The Initiative does have ties to Crystal Dynamics, and that makes sense, but Square just allowing a studio to go work on this, that makes a lot less sense. So I'd say Square or Sega is a real possibility. Koei Tecmo is also an option, but they don't really team up with Microsoft all that much. Konami mostly makes these things. They don't really make that many video games anymore, so that seems unlikely. Capcom hasn't teamed up with Microsoft in a very long time, and last time it did, it didn't end too well. Bandai Namco would be really cool just if we could get sequels to these games confirmed, but considering they do a lot more than just make video games, I can't see this happening. So, who do you think it's gonna be? Leave your comments and thoughts below. I won't read them, but it'll make you feel a bit better, I guess. A bit better when GTA 6 is exclusive to Xbox.